Good afternoon, welcome to GrainTV. My name's Cody Bills. Today is August 14th. It's a Friday for the weekly wrap-up. Let's turn over to the grain hedge trading platforms. Here we close off the day. Corn trading up a half penny, soybeans down 11 1/4 cents, and wheat in Chicago trading up 3 cents on the day. Next week, things you want to keep on the radar. First of all, on Monday, NOPA crush numbers are going to be released for the month of July. Basically, analysts are expecting to see 141.175 million bushels crushed for that month of July. And then, of course, on average, soy oil stocks are expected to come in right around 1.592 billion pounds. So these are numbers that we're going to want to pay close attention to, especially if you're dealing with soybeans. Also on Monday, in relation to the grains, we're going to see the Pro Farmer Crop Tour kick off. This is a highly publicized crop tour and has potential to move the market. So let's pay close attention to any sort of tweets from their tour and also their daily summaries that they come out with. So we're going to be paying close attention and following that on GrainTV here next week. So make sure you stay tuned. Let's take a quick look at the daily charts. You'll notice here corn was able to kind of hang in there, but we're right around resistance here at 375. I wouldn't be surprised if next week we start to cup over and retest the lows on Wednesday. In general, the Wednesday report was very bearish, and we'll talk a little bit about those numbers here in just a moment. When you look at soybeans, you'll notice we had resistance right around 926. Today we started selling back off. It looks as though it's likely that we see a retest of the lows on Wednesday. Keep in mind that the NOPA crush numbers are going to have a big bearing on whether or not we do that right away or whether or not we delay that process. But I really do believe, based on the fundamentals here, based on what we saw in the WASDE report, that prices are going to be pressured to the downside. For producers out there, that's going to be very important. If you have any questions about how to protect yourself from decaying prices, you can always give us a call at 877-472-4607. Let's take a quick look at this WASDE report. What was so surprising about it? Well, first of all, yield. Yield was the major surprise. Analysts were expecting to see a yield revision to the downside. What we saw was a 2 bushel per acre increase on corn yields to the upside. That brought us up to 168.8 bushels per acre for corn, and that was significant, bringing ending stocks well over what analysts were expecting. Soybeans here, we saw a 0.9 bushel per acre increase, and that was substantial, really missing analyst estimates here on the ending stocks and creating a very bearish surprise. Now, this week we do have an updated Planalytics yield forecast. This Planalytics yield forecast basically is it's taking satellite imagery, it's looking at the greenness, it's correlating that to years in the past using its own model to forecast what yield will be here at the end of the season. And what you'll notice is that the latest yield estimate showed soybean yield at 45.9 bushels per acre. Now that's up from 45.6. That's a 0.3 bushel per acre increase here, but that is below the current USDA forecast of 46.9 bushels per acre. When we look at corn, you'll notice that Planalytics is looking for 167.2 bushels per acre. That is up half a bushel from their previous forecast of 166.7. Basically, what we've seen throughout the month of August is really adequate moisture. We've seen good growing conditions throughout July. We've seen good growing conditions throughout August, and it looks as though we're going to get additional rains. Basically, the recent drying of fields across the northern and eastern parts of the grain belt have trimmed some of the bushels, so that kind of kept us from kept Planalytics from revising yield forecasts much higher than where they are right now. They still are a bit shy of the August USDA WASDE report, which was sitting at 168.8. Currently, the Planalytics is sitting at 167.2. But we did see a revision higher here based on very positive growing conditions throughout July and August. Now, where do we go from here? When you look at the weather outlook, it looks as though we're going to get adequate moisture over the next week. 6 to 10 day weather outlook looks to bring in plenty of moisture here, and the 8 to 14 day weather outlook also shows adequate moisture throughout the Midwest. So no real weather concerns right now, and I think what that means is that prices are likely to be pressured here in the weeks going forward, and not only with the Pro Farmer Tour. That's the one wild card that we're going to have to pay attention to. If they see any sort of production out there that doesn't seem to match up with the USDA, that could provide a little bit of a spike, because I think there's a lot of disbelief out there from that August report, and that disbelief could be fueled by a Pro Farmer Crop Tour that finds production that's not necessarily in line with what the USDA forecasted. But I don't necessarily think we're going to get any major surprises, simply because when the MDA Crop Tour went through just a couple weeks ago, it was basically the results that they found was slightly worse than last year, and last year had significant production. So we'll have to see what Pro Farmer Crop Tour has to say. We will be waiting very patiently for that next week. Let's talk a little bit about the cash markets. This is something we always do on a Friday. You'll notice when you look at these maps, soybean basis declined 2 cents. So not only did prices decline, but we also saw basis weaken throughout the Midwest. That is not a positive sign for producers. We saw crush facilities down 9 cents. We saw the Gulf unchanged and the river unchanged, but there was noticeably weaker parts throughout the middle part of the river in the Illinois area. So in general, for soybeans, negative basis here this week, negative price action, hurting the producer on both sides of the equation. When you look at corn basis, we did see a decline of 1 cent this week. Ethanol was unchanged, but there were some outstanding facilities that did increase basis, really trying to draw some of the supply out of producers' bins in the wake of all this selling. When you look at the river, river seemed to be more affected here by basis than soybeans was. We saw river on average down 2 cents. We saw the Gulf on average down 7 cents. We've had very weak export sales over the past 2 weeks for corn. Hopefully the decline in prices here is going to help spur on some export demand. We'll have to see. Guys, that wraps up today's show. If you have any questions about what we talked about today, please give the office a call. The number is 877-472-4607. Thanks a lot for tuning in. We'll see you here on Monday.